Hello, you are listening to Rot-Weiss-Rot Report, the podcast for those who live and work in Austria. Every week, we break down the most important developments in a clear and concise way, keeping you informed about the changes that affect your work, your paperwork, and your everyday life. This week, parents risk losing 1,300 euros due to yet another delay in the digital Eltern-Kind Pass. Parliament has voted through a 2-year budget. What is frozen, what is growing, and where savings are being made. Austria ranks 6th safest country in the world, according to the Global Peace Index 2026. 1 in 4 Austrian factories is considering relocating abroad. What does this mean for the labor market? Vienna sets a bureaucratic record: 5 hours in a queue for a single photograph. All of this and more in just a moment.
Let us begin with a story that could cost parents of young children 1,300 euros, if they are not aware of it. The Eltern-Kind Pass is Austria's system of scheduled medical checkups for pregnant women and children up to the age of 6, in place since 1974. The rule is straightforward. If parents fail to confirm that the checkups have been completed, their Kinderbetreuungsgeld, the childcare allowance, is reduced by 1,300 euros. A steep penalty, but that is how the system works. 2 years ago, Austria decided to make the confirmation process fully digital. Doctors would submit the data themselves, and parents would no longer need to carry paper records anywhere. The first rollout, planned for early 2026, collapsed. The second deadline in October was cancelled by Parliament last week. The new system is now officially set to launch in October of next year. The reason? The IT systems of the individual Bundesländer and the federal government remain incompatible with one another. Only Carinthia was ready. The remaining Bundesländer requested that the launch be postponed. Austria's ombudsman has already received numerous complaints from parents who relied on the new system and missed their deadlines as a result. What should you do right now? If your child is not yet 18 months old, contact your pediatrician or family doctor. Request a paper confirmation of all completed checkups and send it to your Krankenkasse. If you have questions or face a language barrier, reach out to Caritas, Diakonie, or Arbeiterkammer, where you can receive free assistance. Do not put this off. You do not want to lose that money. Our next story covers what was a landmark week in Parliament, which concluded last Friday. The Austrian Nationalrat held 5 plenary sessions in succession, something not seen since 1993. The result? A 2-year budget for 2027 and 2028, accompanied by approximately 70 supporting pieces of legislation. What does this mean for those living and working in Austria? The Familienbeihilfe, the monthly child benefit, and the Kinderbetreuungsgeld are frozen for 2 years. They will not increase. This is not a cut, but the real purchasing power of these payments will erode slightly. The rules on unemployment insurance have also changed. From now on, even low-paid and seasonal workers must pay the full contribution into the fund. The reduced rate that previously applied has been abolished. On the positive side, the budget for women's programs is rising by more than 60%, with funds directed toward shelters for victims of domestic violence and women's advisory services. 2 new subjects are being introduced in Austrian Allgemeinbildende Höhere Schulen: media literacy and education for democracy. A new Paketsteuer, a small levy on parcel deliveries, has been introduced. Parliament has also extended subsidies for agricultural diesel fuel and pledged investment in the quality of Austria's inland waterways. That said, most of these reforms will take effect from the new year, so we will return to the details of the new budget in due course. And we have wonderful news for anyone who values peace of mind. Austria is once again at the top of the world's safest countries, according to the Global Peace Index, the annual ranking compiled by the Institute for Economics and Peace. The country has secured 6th place among 163 nations, ahead of almost everyone except Iceland, New Zealand, Switzerland, Slovenia, and Ireland. Looking at the full list, 7 of the 10 safest places in the world are located in Central and Western Europe. But how is this actually measured? This is not a simple street survey. Experts assess a wide range of parameters, from crime rates and a country's involvement in international conflicts to the degree to which the military influences the daily lives of ordinary citizens. In other words, the lower a country's level of militarization, the higher it ranks. Austria was rated particularly highly for the sense of personal safety its residents experience. In parks after dark, on the metro, or simply walking down the street. The level of social trust here is genuinely among the highest in the world. It is worth noting that, compared with previous years, Austria has consistently remained within the top 10, shifting 1 or 2 positions depending on how countries respond to new global crises. But 6th place is a very solid result. Given what is happening in the world right now, living in one of the 6 most peaceful places on the planet is more than just a dry statistic in a report. And we will now turn to the subject of money, because the economy touches our lives no less than security does.
The freshly published Industry Radar 2026 report, a major study by the Wirtschaftskammer and the country's leading economists, has made waves this week. For the first time, the scale of the problem has been laid bare. Nearly 43% of Austria's industrial enterprises are now seriously considering relocating their production abroad within the coming years. More than that, 1 in 4 business owners says this is no longer merely theoretical. It is a highly probable scenario. This is not panic without foundation. Over the past 3 years, 41% of companies have already started to act, having partially moved their operations outside of Austria. Why is this happening? 3 core factors are at play. First, China. Beijing subsidizes its own goods so aggressively that they end up as much as 50% cheaper than their European counterparts. When the United States closed its market behind tariff walls, that flood of cheap Chinese goods poured into Europe, and Austrian manufacturers simply cannot compete on price. Second, energy. In Austria, it currently costs significantly more than in the United States or in Asian markets, making every unit of manufactured output effectively gold-plated. The third, and arguably most painful factor, cited by nearly every business owner, is the cost of labor. Payroll taxes and employer contributions in Austria are among the highest in the world, and running a workforce here is simply no longer profitable for many. The worst affected sectors are metalworking, electronics, and automotive components, the very industries that form the backbone of the Austrian economy. If this trend is not reversed, Austria risks gradually losing its status as an industrial nation. The government is well aware of this and is trying to respond. The new budget already includes a reform of business regulations under the Gewerbeordnung, and there are promises to reduce the tax burden on wages to some extent. Whether this will be enough to persuade factories to stay, that question remains open, and we will be watching closely to see how this plan plays out in practice. There is also positive news on the regulatory front. Last week, the government submitted to Parliament a substantial package of amendments to Austria's business licensing law, the Gewerbeordnung. The headline change? Officials are abolishing more than 5,000 paper-based inspections per year. Where previously an inspector might arrive in person to check whether every document was sitting in the correct folder, from now on, a digital upload will suffice. This translates into real savings in time and stress, freeing business owners to focus on their work rather than their paperwork. Beyond this, a number of technical requirements that previously demanded months of waiting for permits have been significantly simplified. Installing solar panels on a roof or a charging station for electric vehicles no longer requires separate approvals, and the process of transferring a business from one owner to another has been made considerably more straightforward. For migrant entrepreneurs who often find themselves lost in Austrian bureaucracy, this represents a meaningful step forward. If you would like to understand how exactly these changes apply to your situation, visit the official WKO website. Everything is set out in detail there, and free consultations are available.
There's also an intriguing new report from the bank UBS, which raises some eyebrows by ranking Austria above Germany and even the United States in terms of prosperity. The important nuance here: this is not about GDP or salary figures, but about the real wealth of households, property, savings, and tangible assets that people actually hold. Austrians, on average, have a structural advantage. They are more likely to own their home or live in quality rented accommodation, and, unlike many Americans, they are not drowning in consumer credit, trying to finance their lives on borrowed money. That said, a crucial caveat is needed here, because this ranking measures the average across the entire system. This wealth is distributed unevenly. For new migrants, people without permanent contracts, or those just beginning to build a life in a new country, the reality looks very different, and considerably harder. Yet the long-term strategy in Austria does hold. Legal employment, accumulated tenure, and regular pension contributions genuinely do, over time, build a solid financial foundation for resident families. If you are building your life here, know that the system is designed for precisely this kind of stable, long-term approach. Meanwhile, Austria's economic press reported last week that the country's national debt has reached a new milestone. Each resident now carries a nominal share of more than 46,800 euros. The figure sounds alarming, but context is essential before drawing conclusions. In truth, all developed nations carry debt. For comparison, the equivalent figure in the United States exceeds $100,000 per person, and Japan's numbers are higher still. National debt is, after all, simply a tool through which the state finances the construction of schools, hospitals, and road maintenance. Austria continues to hold one of the highest credit ratings in the world, and the interest rates it pays on its debt remain minimal because international markets regard it as an exceptionally reliable borrower. This is not a crisis. It is, in many respects, a hallmark of a large social state. It will nonetheless be interesting to observe how the new budget affects these figures over time. To close the economics segment, a tip from Austria's consumer protection organization, the Konsumentenschutz organization. Their analysts have worked out how to meaningfully cut what are already fairly steep household water bills. Swapping the bath for a quick shower, combined with mindful use of time, can save up to 400 euros a year. That money currently goes, quite literally, down the drain through energy-intensive habits. The most effective way to start saving without sacrificing comfort is to install a Spar-Duschkopf, an eco-shower head. It costs between 20 and 40 euros and works on the principle of aeration, mixing water with air. You get the same strong pressure, but 2 to 3 times less water flows through the head. Consumer experts estimate that this device pays for itself within the first 3 months of use, after which it simply puts money back in your pocket. At a time when every bill has to be scrutinized closely, this is one of the simplest ways to optimize household expenses with minimal effort. And now we move to the most important segment of this episode, the news for migrants, where we break down the key changes that directly affect your life and work in Austria.
Our first story will be of particular interest to anyone currently looking for work or considering a career change. Austria's hotel and tourism sector has been facing a catastrophic staff shortage for several years now. The situation is so severe that in hotels, including 5-star establishments, management is regularly found cleaning rooms or washing dishes themselves to cover a shift. This is now an open reality reported in the Austrian media. For you, this means a considerably easier path to employment. When staff are scarce, employers become less demanding. They are prepared to overlook the absence of local experience or imperfect German. The positions in constant demand include receptionists, waiters, cooks, housekeeping staff, and technical personnel. Starting salaries begin at around €2,200 gross. If you are ready to give it a try, look for vacancies directly on the websites of major hotel chains such as Accor, Marriott, or Vienna House. And if you are concerned about your language level, bear in mind that the Arbeitsmarkt service offers specialist sector-specific courses to help you get up to speed. We already mentioned the reform of business regulations, the Gewerbeordnung, in the economics segment. But let us now look specifically at what it means for you as a migrant entrepreneur. These are not simply administrative tweaks. They are concrete steps that save real time. You no longer need to navigate a bureaucratic obstacle course to install solar panels on the roof of your office or a charging station for electric vehicles. The separate permits for these have been abolished. Transferring a business to a partner or family member has also become far simpler. Your business license now remains valid for longer, so you will not need to restart the entire registration process from scratch. On top of this, more than 5,000 minor annual inspections have simply been removed. You no longer have to spend time presenting inspectors with folders full of paper. A digital submission is enough. If you are planning to open your first business in Austria, do not try to navigate everything on your own. The WKO.at portal offers a service called Gründerberatung, free advisory consultations for people just starting out. They will walk you through everything from tax registration to business licensing. We have several updates for those who are behind the wheel. We start with the bad news. Austria has significantly tightened its approach to speeding. Severe violations can now result in a fine of up to €6,000. This is not a minor inconvenience. It is a sum that demands serious attention to road signs and the speedometer. But there is also a welcome development. The rules for vehicle roadworthiness inspections, known as the pickerel, have been changed in drivers' favor. For a new vehicle, the first inspection is now required 4 years after registration, rather than the previous 3. Subsequent inspections have also been spaced further apart, now every 2 years. This delivers a real saving in both time and money on regular garage visits. To avoid missing your inspection date and incurring an unnecessary fine, check your next due date on the official website of the Bundesministerium für Finanzen or through the ÖAMTC services. And finally, a word about schools. We mentioned earlier that the Austrian Parliament voted last week on a broad package of important decisions. One of them directly concerns those of you with school-age children. 2 new compulsory subjects are being introduced in Austrian schools. The first is Media and Democracy. The second is Informatics and Artificial Intelligence, where pupils will learn the basic principles of how algorithms work, gain an introduction to programming, and study cybersecurity. The exact content of the curricula is still being developed. Parliament has set the process in motion, and the details will be determined through the relevant regulations. This means your children may encounter these subjects in their timetable within the next year or 2. Importantly, this applies to the upper level of the Allgemeinbildende Höhere Schule. If your child attends one of these schools, it is worth asking the teachers when exactly these subjects will be introduced at their particular institution.
Vienna News. Vienna has once again confirmed its status as one of the most livable cities on the planet. According to the International Quality of Life Index 2026, The Austrian capital ranks second in the world, surpassed only by Copenhagen. For many, this is just a number. But let us look at what this ranking actually measures and why Vienna has, once again, overtaken other European capitals. The index is built on 30 clearly defined indicators grouped into 5 categories: stability and crime levels, access to health care, infrastructure quality, environmental conditions, and the standard of education. Why is Vienna at the top? First, there is the city's balanced pricing policy. While in other capitals, rent devours more than half of monthly earnings, Vienna's system of social housing keeps prices regulated and maintained at an acceptable level. Second, Vienna has the cheapest public transport in Europe. An annual pass costs €365, just €1 per day for unlimited travel across the city. Add to that the high level of personal safety on the streets and access to free health care through your insurance card. That said, if you live in Vienna, you know that the feeling of quality of life depends enormously on the district. The 13th and 19th districts have traditionally recorded the best results for stability and ecological quality. These are zones with minimal dense development, generous green space, and a calm pace of life. If you are looking for modern comfort and well-developed infrastructure for families, the 22nd district remains the leader, with active construction of new schools and kindergartens currently underway. And for those who want everything within reach, from bars to offices, the 7th district remains the top choice. Of course, rankings deal in averages. In practice, we all encounter queues and other urban frustrations. But the fact remains, Vienna invests in infrastructure more than most capitals, and that investment directly translates into time and money you keep in your pocket every day. Meanwhile, Vienna is fundamentally rethinking its approach to how the city receives and supports migrants in their integration. The city authorities have officially relaunched the Integrationsrat, the Integration Council, which for a long time functioned merely as an advisory body. Deputy Mayor Bettina Emmerling of the NEOS party has completely restructured the team. The defining difference of the new council is that it has been brought down to earth. Where previously the body was dominated by theorists and academics, it is now composed exclusively of practitioners. These are teachers who work daily in classrooms alongside migrant children, employment specialists who understand the real difficulties of finding work, and security experts engaged in preventing radicalization. Why does this matter for the city and for you? This council is responsible for producing 2 key documents: the Wiener Integrationskodex, the Integration Code, and the Wiener Integrationsleitbild, the Integration Strategy. To put it simply, these are the new ground rules for integration in Vienna. The city is systematically rethinking its policy, and the expected outcome is not a set of abstract reports, but concrete support programs to be rolled out over the coming months. This could mean more targeted and accessible pathways to language courses, assistance with diploma recognition, and employment support. We are watching closely to see what these changes look like in practice, whether they will translate into genuine support or simply amount to a change of signage on office doors. We will keep you updated as soon as details of the new programs emerge. In the meantime, Vienna is at the center of an unusual court case that has raised fundamental questions about gender equality in the city's infrastructure. It began when a resident filed a lawsuit against the municipal administration over the pricing policy in public toilets. The situation is simple. Access to enclosed cubicles costs 50 cents, while urinals for men are available free of charge. The plaintiff argues that this represents a form of covert gender discrimination, since women have no free alternative, whereas men can avail themselves of one at no cost. The case is currently before the courts. The city's arguments so far rest on technical grounds, but if the court rules in the plaintiff's favor, the consequences will be felt across the board. The municipal authorities would be required either to radically overhaul their pricing model, for instance by introducing a nominal charge for all users, or to make access to all public toilets free, covering the cost of maintenance from the city budget. And to finish, a story that sounds more like the plot of a cartoon, yet became very real reality in a Viennese park. Local police had long been unable to solve a series of petty thefts. Wallets and smartphones left unattended on benches or on the grass were disappearing. After an extensive search, it emerged that the culprit was not only a human thief, but also a local fox. The animal had shown considerable enterprise. It had been regularly carrying stolen items back to its burrow, turning it into a veritable warehouse of electronics and accessories. So, when relaxing outdoors, do not leave your valuables unattended. Keep everything important on your person, because sometimes your belongings may attract not just opportunist thieves, but also some rather unexpected residents of the urban wilds.
Federal States News. We begin with a story that concerns your health, and one worth knowing about even if you do not live near Schwekat. In Lower Austria, in the small village of Mansvort near the OMV oil refinery, a scandal that has been unfolding for several months continues to escalate. Earlier this spring, it emerged that private wells belonging to local residents had been found to contain PFAS, so-called forever chemicals. These are a group of compounds used for decades in the AFFF firefighting foam during training exercises at the OMV facility. The foam seeped into the soil into the groundwater, and the groundwater into private wells. Local residents were advised not to drink well water and not to use it for their gardens, and to switch to mains water instead. But this week, the situation grew more acute. One Mansfort resident decided not to wait for official assurances and, at their own expense, commissioned an analysis from an independent accredited laboratory in Styria. The result was deeply troubling. Water officially considered safe should, by the standards of the test results, be prohibited as drinking water altogether. Environmental scientists point out that the problem extends beyond Austria alone. The European Union's threshold for harmful substances in this area is set too high, a standard that may be linked to elevated risks of cancer and infertility with prolonged consumption of such water. Yet OMV has still not published detailed results of its own analyses, despite repeated requests from residents and environmental organizations. The company states only that it is taking measures and will begin making payments to those affected. What does this mean for you? If you live in Mansfort, Schwekat, or the surrounding area and have a private well, do not rely on official reassurances. Commission an independent water analysis. If you are connected to the mains water supply, the available data suggests it is currently clean. Now, a topic of importance to everyone with travel plans. From the 11th of July, the summer school holidays have begun simultaneously in 6 Austrian Bundesländer: Carinthia, Upper Austria, Salzburg, Styria, Tirol, and Vorarlberg. At the same time, the holidays have started in 4 German Bundesländer and parts of the Netherlands. Thousands of cars are now heading south, and all of them are moving through the same Austrian mountain passes and tunnels. The ÖAMTC, the Austrian Motoring Club, is forecasting the worst delays on several routes. The Brenner Autobahn A13, the main artery between Austria and Italy via Innsbruck, is the most congested. Before the Schönberg toll station and around the construction work on the Lügbrücke Bridge, queues can stretch for an hour or more. The Tauern Autobahn A10, the route through Salzburg towards Croatia and Slovenia, has had special transit exit restrictions in place until the 13th of September. If your destination is outside Austria, certain exits are closed to you. Sat-nav apps, including Google Maps and Waze, frequently ignore these restrictions and can navigate you directly into a fine. Check the current restrictions before you set off. If you have any flexibility in your departure time, avoid Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings. The calmest times to travel are early Sunday morning or on a weekday. Current information on congestion and traffic restrictions is available in the ÖAMTC app.
Now let us turn to Salzburg, where there is an important ruling that concerns all migrants and minority communities. A Salzburg court has ruled against a hotel that had banned women from swimming in its pool wearing a burkini, the full-coverage swimwear worn by Muslim women. The hotel had cited hygiene regulations and company policy. The court rejected both arguments and ruled the ban discriminatory on the grounds of religion. Why does this matter to you personally? Because this sets a precedent. It confirms that in Austria, it is not permissible to deny a person access to a public or commercial establishment on the basis of their religious or cultural practices. This applies not only to burkinis, but to any situation in which a person is turned away or refused service on account of their appearance, clothing, religion, or background. If you have personally experienced something similar, this is not acceptable, and it can be challenged. Free legal advice and support are available from the Gleichbehandlungsanwaltschaft, Austria's anti-discrimination authority. It is a government body, and it exists precisely for situations like these. And finally, an extraordinary story from Upper Austria. A local resident has lost nearly €1 million through an online romance scam, and most distressingly, she continues to communicate with those who defrauded her. The scheme is well known and extensively documented. A person connects with someone on social media or a dating site. Trust is built over months, gentle correspondence, the sense of a genuine relationship developing. Then a problem arises, a customs hold on a gift that is on its way, or a sudden medical emergency. A small sum is needed, then another, then a larger one. In this way, fraudsters extract genuinely significant amounts of money, targeting lonely people and older individuals in particular. Remember this simple rule. If someone you have met online has never appeared before you in person and is asking you for money, it is a scam. Without exception. It does not matter how many months the correspondence has lasted or how sincere it felt. If you or someone close to you has found themselves in this situation, contact the cyber police. There is a dedicated online reporting form. That said, even law enforcement rarely succeeds in recovering the money for victims, which is why the best protection is never to send it in the first place.
And that brings us to the end of our review of the week's events. We will continue to keep you informed about the most important developments. Subscribe to the weekly podcast Rot-Weiss-Rot REPORT, the podcast for those who live and work in Austria. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. That is all for this week. Until next time.